Imagine this. You move into a quiet, picture-perfect neighborhood in suburban Ohio. The houses are neat, the lawns are manicured, and your new neighbor flashes a smile that could light up a room. He's charming, helpful, the kind of guy who brings over homemade cookies and offers to fix your leaky faucet. Sounds like a dream, right? But what if that perfect neighbor is hiding something so dark, so twisted, that it makes your skin crawl? Welcome to Shocking Stories, where we peel back the curtain on the secrets people don't want you to know. Today, we're diving into a tale that'll make you question everyone living next door. Buckle up, because this one's a wild ride. Have you ever wondered who's really watching you from across the fence? Her name was Emily Carter, a 32-year-old graphic designer who just moved to Willow Creek, a small town about 20 miles outside Columbus. After a messy divorce, Emily wanted a fresh start, somewhere quiet, safe, where she could rebuild her life. The house she bought was a charming 2-story with a wraparound porch, the kind you see in Hallmark movies. The neighborhood felt like it was plucked from a postcard. Kids riding bikes, neighbors waving as they watered their gardens. But it was her next-door neighbor, James Holden, who made her feel like she'd hit the jackpot. James was in his early 40s, tall, with a disarming smile and a knack for making you feel like you'd known him forever. He showed up the day she moved in, offering to carry boxes and cracking jokes that had her laughing for the first time in months. "You're gonna love it here, Emily," he said, handing her a cold lemonade. "This place is home." At first, everything was perfect. James was the neighbor everyone dreams of. He'd mow her lawn when she was swamped with work, drop off leftovers from his famous lasagna, and even invited her to a neighborhood barbecue. Emily felt like she'd found a friend, maybe even something more. There was a spark in his eyes when he talked to her, a warmth that made her heart flutter. But then, little things started to feel off. One night, Emily noticed James's lights were on at 3 a.m., his silhouette moving behind the curtains. Another time, she caught him standing in his driveway, staring at her house for a little too long. She brushed it off. Maybe he was just quirky, right? But then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening, and Emily was taking out the trash when she saw James's garage door slightly ajar. A faint glow spilled out, like someone had left a light on. Curiosity got the better of her. She glanced around, no one was watching, and tiptoed closer. Inside, she saw something that made her stomach drop. A bulletin board, covered in photos, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. And in the center, a photo of her, taken from across the street, completely unaware. Her heart pounded as she backed away, questions swirling in her mind. Why was her picture there? What was James hiding? You ever get that feeling in your gut that something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That's where Emily was, standing on the edge of a truth she wasn't ready for. Stick with me, because this story's about to take a turn you won't see coming. What would you do if you found something like that? Emily couldn't sleep that night. She kept replaying the image of that bulletin board in her head, her face staring back from the center. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe James was just a nosy neighbor, or maybe he was working on some kind of community project. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. The next morning, she decided to dig deeper. She started paying closer attention to James's habits. He left for work at exactly 7:45 a.m. every day, driving a sleek, black SUV that seemed too expensive for his modest job as a consultant. He never talked about family, never mentioned friends, and his house was always eerily quiet. No visitors, no parties. Emily started to wonder, who was this guy? She began searching online, typing his name into every database she could think of. Nothing came up. No LinkedIn, no Facebook, not even an old high school photo. It was like James Holden didn't exist. One afternoon, while James was out, Emily's curiosity got the better of her again. She noticed his back door was unlocked, careless for someone so meticulous. Her hands trembled as she slipped inside, telling herself she'd just take a quick look. The house was spotless, almost too perfect, like a model home. But in the basement, she found something that made her blood run cold. A locked door with a keypad, the kind you'd see in a high-security office. Why would a suburban neighbor need that? She didn't have time to process it because she heard the unmistakable sound of a car pulling into the driveway. James was back. Panicked, she bolted out the back door, her heart racing. As she hid behind her own fence, she realized she'd left her phone on his kitchen counter. Can you imagine being stuck in a situation like that? Your phone, with all your secrets, left in the house of someone you're starting to suspect. Let's see what happens next. Picture this. You're trapped in your own nightmare, heart pounding, knowing you've just made a mistake that could unravel everything. That's where Emily was, crouched behind her fence, the chilly Ohio evening air biting at her skin. She'd left her phone in James' house, and now he was home. Every second felt like an eternity as she weighed her options. Go back and risk getting caught, or leave it and hope he didn't notice? What would you do, knowing your entire digital life, texts, photos, passwords, was sitting on a stranger's counter? Emily's story is about to get even crazier, so don't look away. She waited until the lights in James' house flicked off around midnight. With her heart in her throat, she crept back to his back door, praying it was still unlocked. It was. The house was silent, but every creak of the floorboards felt like a scream. She found her phone on the counter, exactly where she'd left it, and grabbed it, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. But as she turned to leave, she heard a noise, a low mechanical hum coming from the basement. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she tiptoed toward the basement stairs. The keypad-locked door was still there, but now a faint red light blinked on the panel, like it had been activated. She didn't dare try to open it, but she noticed something new, a small vent near the floor, just big enough to peek through. What she saw made her knees buckle. Inside was a room unlike anything she'd expected. Monitors lined the walls, displaying grainy footage of houses in the neighborhood, including hers. There were files stacked on a desk, labeled with names she recognized. Neighbors, the local mail carrier, even the barista at the coffee shop she frequented. And there, on a table, was a stack of IDs, driver's licenses, passports, all with James's face, but different names. Emily's mind raced. Was he a private investigator? A criminal? Something worse? She snapped a quick photo with her phone, her hands trembling so much the image was blurry, and bolted out of the house. Back in her own bedroom, she locked the door and stared at the photo, her mind spiraling. Who was this man living 50 feet from her? The next day, Emily couldn't focus. Her graphic design deadlines loomed, but all she could think about was James. She decided to confide in her coworker, Sarah, who was obsessed with true crime podcasts. Sarah's eyes widened as Emily recounted the story. "You need to go to the police," Sarah urged, but Emily hesitated. What if she'd misunderstood? What if James was just eccentric and she was blowing this out of proportion? But Sarah wasn't having it. She pulled up a website for missing persons in Ohio and started scrolling. That's when Emily's heart stopped. A face stared back from the screen. A man who looked eerily like James, listed as a person of interest in a string of disappearances in a town 100 miles away. The name was different, but the eyes, the jawline, it was him. Or was it? Have you ever seen someone and felt like you knew them, but something was just wrong? Emily decided to play it cool. She couldn't go to the police without proof, and she wasn't about to confront James directly. Instead, she started watching him more closely, noting every detail. He left the house at odd hours, sometimes returning with bags he never unpacked. Once, she saw him burning papers in his backyard at 2 a.m., the flames casting shadows that made her shiver. She started keeping a journal, jotting down everything: the times he left, the cars that visited, even the way he glanced at her when he thought she wasn't looking. It was like a game of cat and mouse, and Emily wasn't sure who was hunting who. But one night, everything changed. She was walking her dog when she saw James talking to a man in a dark SUV, their voices big and urgent. As she passed, James' eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, his smile was gone. It was a look that said, "I know you're watching." Can you feel that chill running down your spine? Because this story's about to take a turn you won't believe. You ever get that feeling someone's watching you, but when you turn around, no one's there? That's how Emily felt every second of every day after that moment in the street. James's cold stare haunted her, like he'd seen right through her. She stopped sleeping, her nights filled with the hum of her neighbor's secrets and the fear that she was in over her head. Welcome back to Shocking Stories, where we're unraveling the truth about the man next door. You ready for the final twist? Because this one's going to leave you speechless. What would you do if you realized you were living next to a lie? Emily knew she couldn't keep playing detective alone. She called Sarah, who showed up with a USB drive full of research she'd pulled from true crime forums. Together, they pieced together a theory. James, or whatever his real name was, might be connected to a network of people involved in something shady, maybe identity theft, maybe worse. The IDs, the surveillance, the late-night meetings, it all pointed to something bigger than one man. Emily decided to take one last risk. She bought a tiny wireless camera, the kind you see in spy movies, and hid it in her backyard, angled to catch James's driveway. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then, on the third night, the camera caught something that made her heart stop. The footage showed James loading a large duffel bag into his SUV at 4 a.m. The bag was heavy, sagging in a way that made Emily's stomach churn. She zoomed in on the footage and saw a faint stain on the bag, dark, possibly blood. Her hands shook as she called Sarah, who insisted they take the evidence to the police. But before they could, Emily got a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." The message was sent from a burner phone, untraceable, but Emily knew it was James. She was terrified, but she wasn't backing down. She forwarded the footage to the local police and waited, every creak in her house making her jump. Have you ever felt like you're in a movie, but the ending's out of your control? The police showed up the next day, but James was gone. His house was empty, the SUV nowhere in sight. They searched the basement and found the locked room, now cleared out except for one thing: a single photo of Emily, pinned to the wall with a handwritten note that read, "You were warned." The police confirmed the man in the missing persons database wasn't James, but someone with a similar face who'd vanished years ago. They suspected James was using stolen identities to stay under the radar, possibly tied to a string of unsolved cases across Ohio. Emily moved out of Willow Creek a week later, unable to shake the feeling that James was still out there, watching. She still checks her locks every night, still jumps at shadows. The worst part? The police never found that duffel bag, and no one knows what or who was inside it. So here's the question. Who's living next to you? That friendly neighbor who waves every morning. Do you really know their story? This is Shocking Stories, and we're just getting started. Hit that like button if this story gave you chills, and subscribe to never miss a twist. Comment below, what would you have done in Emily's shoes? And if you're brave enough, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the scariest secrets are hiding right next door.